Progressive-era politicians from the 1890s to the 1920s led a conservation movement with its goals set on maintaining the beautiful landscapes of the United States. President Teddy Roosevelt took these ideas of conservationism and ran with them, thus beginning the history of environmentalism in the US. Merriam-Webster defines environmentalism as advocacy of the preservation, restoration, or improvement of the natural environment. Over time, this idea has taken many forms, from the creation of national parks to the war on pesticides and the fight against climate change. Let's start with the beginning and go back to Big Man Teddy. The early conservationist movement was focused on the management of resources in a manner that wasn't wasteful. During the late 19th century, the US attitude towards natural resources was pretty bad, and companies used them however best benefited them, without caring if the methods were sustainable or not. Many Westerners who saw this firsthand were disgusted at it, and so they demanded that the government step in and put regulations to stop companies from taking advantage of the environment. The only problem was, these conservationists needed a voice, and they finally found one in this monocle-wearing, mustache-having monster of a man, Theodore Roosevelt. Roosevelt was influenced by the naturalists, and so he took charge of creating environment-friendly acts, starting with the 1902 Newlands Act, which funded irrigation by selling government territory in the West. In 1907, he appointed the Inland Waterways Commission to study water transportation, water development, and make sure that everything ran smoothly. Teddy Roosevelt's crowning achievement in environmentalism was, of course, the creation of the United States Forest Service, in addition to the creation of national parks, game reserves, bird reserves, and national forests. All of these were under the comprehensive 1906 American Antiquities Act. After Teddy left office, environmentalism became a less important topic in politics. That is, until the Roosevelts struck again. Franklin Delano Roosevelt took Teddy's start, and he ran with it. Get it? 'Cause never mind. FDR made use out of the Department of Agriculture in an attempt to defeat the Dust Bowl. In addition to this, one of FDR's most successful New Deal programs was the Civilian Conservation Corps, which was a work relief program for the unemployed that gave jobs concerned with preserving the environment. Environmentalism fell off for a bit after the World War II era. However, events in the 60s gained support for the movement once again. A major impetus for the re-emergence of the movement was the 1962 publication of Rachel Carson's book Silent Spring, which spoke on the problems with pesticides and how they can run off into water supplies. During the 70s, plenty of legislation was passed in lieu of the new environmental concerns. Among these were the act that created the Environmental Protection Agency, also known as the EPA, the Endangered Species Act, and the Safe Drinking Water Act. A series of water acts inspired by Silent Spring closely monitored water supplies for the health of both human and animal populations. The 80s saw the rise of the anti-nuclear movements, which gained momentum after the 1979 partial meltdown of the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant in Pennsylvania. But other than that, it was a slow decade for environmentalism because Reagan did not place it very high on his agenda. In the 1990s, more legislation continued with the passage of the Oil Pollution Act and the Clean Air Act. The Clean Air Act is one of the most relevant environmental laws because it is very comprehensive. The law sets standards for the amount of nitrogen dioxide and ozone that can be in the air, as well as measuring other pollutants, measuring acid rain, putting controls on fuel, among other things. In recent years, there has been a big push to ditch fossil fuels and use strictly renewable resources, such as solar power, wind power, hydroelectric, among others. But as of now, oil still remains king in the United States, and while coal has certainly fallen off, it hasn't completely disappeared. Environmentalism is more pertinent in US politics than it ever has been, and debates over whether the US should be in the Paris Agreement still circulate. In addition to that, debates over what, if anything, should be done to improve our environmental position. The major push for environmentalism over the past 20 years has been based around the idea that our planet is in a rapid state of decay, and that we need to do something about it. But that line of reasoning is not necessarily something that everyone agrees with. Bjorn Lomberg offers a differing point of view in his book, The Skeptical Environmentalist. Lomberg argues that the environment is not in a perfect state as things are right now, but they are improving. And because things are getting better, we shouldn't make drastic changes. His argument is constructed by using immense amounts of data and empirical analysis. Historically, environmentalism has come in and out of vogue over and over again. It will often fade out only to be revived by a new event, such as a nuclear meltdown or an oil spill. This modern era could just be another rotation in the cycle, or perhaps the problems are reaching their crescendo, and that's up to the eye of the beholder. Regardless, things will be changing in the coming years, as electric cars are becoming more and more relevant, solar panels continue to appear, and debates like the CMP corridor continue to emerge. The consequences of these changes are not all rainbows and butterflies, however, as many of the United States manufacturing policies have simply resulted in sending goods to be manufactured in China, where coal still runs many factories. It is possible that our good-meaning legislation is just exporting our problems elsewhere, where they continue to do harm to the environment. Environmentalism is a complicated topic and will continue to affect American politics. Many claim to have the solutions, but ultimately only time will tell as to what we should do to preserve the natural world.